In this video, we're going to be learning about aggregate functions. Aggregate functions allow you to combine values across multiple rows and return a single result. And some of the most common aggregate functions that you'll encounter are count, sum, min, max, and average. Let's start things off by looking at the count function. One really common use for the count function is to be able to count the number of rows in a particular table. And the way we can do that is as follows. Running that. So what we've done here is we've gone select count star from film. And this has returned the number of rows in the film table, which is 1,000. This argument that got passed into the count function, this star, is a wildcard. It tells the count function to count the number of rows. In place of this star, you can also pass in an expression to the count function, like for example, a column name. And if you pass in a column name, the result you'll get will be the number of rows that have a value for that particular column. So the number of rows that are not null. So let's replace this star with the column length from the film table. And our result is 998. So what that's telling us is that there are 998 rows that have a non-null length. Or stated another way, we now know that there are 2 films with a null length. Something that's also quite cool as well is you can use the distinct keyword inside these aggregate functions. Let's say, for example, that we wanted to know how many unique kinds of ratings are given to films. We can use the distinct keyword to do that. So what we'll say is distinct rating. And the result is 5. And if we want to write another query just to verify that, let's go down and do that. Running that and looking at those results, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we've got 5 distinct ratings that are in use. And as I mentioned earlier, when you use the count function with an expression, it excludes any null results. So this is why we got 5, for example, when we ran this query and not 6. I'll just clear this up. And a last quick point I'll mention as well is that sometimes instead of doing count star from film to return the total number of rows in that table, sometimes you'll see people doing count 1 and you get the same result doing that. It's equivalent, but I'd recommend avoiding it. Just use count star if you want to get a count of all the rows in a table or group. There's also the sum function. And to demonstrate that, what I'm going to do is write a query that sums up all the different film lengths for every single film and outputs the result. And so we can do that by just saying sum length from film. The result is 114,885 minutes. And so you can think of aggregate functions as squashing all of the rows together to produce a single result. Here, the sum function has added the length values in every row all together to produce a single result. Some other common functions are min, max, and average. I'll demonstrate all 3 now in a single query where I'm just looking at the payment table. And what I'm going to do is return the minimum amount that we were paid, the maximum amount that we were paid, and the average amount that we were paid. Running that query. So min has aggregated all of the columns together and it's just picked the lowest value. So at one point, some customer did pay us $0. Max has done the opposite and it's returned the maximum value that it found in that entire collection of payment amounts. And average has come up with an average value. What is the average amount people have paid us, looking at all those different amounts? There are more aggregate functions than just these. If you're interested in seeing a full list, go to that Postgres documentation link and search for aggregate functions. And then in the next video, I'll introduce this idea of aggregate functions actually working over groups that you define and not all rows in the table.